Taz is ready to learn about recruiters. Are you? I think it's fair to say that if you've ever applied for a job, you've probably encountered a recruiter in the wild. And you might have strong feelings about that experience. Maybe it was a good experience, and maybe it wasn't. Today we're going to talk about the general basic overview of what is a recruiter and what do they do. A recruiter is someone working to help a company fill a job opening. Let me say that one more time for the people in the back. A recruiter is there to help a company fill a job opening. A recruiter is not someone who is there to help you find jobs. There's a big difference, and that's something that gets misunderstood a lot. Now, a recruiter can either work directly for the company, so they're typically considered like a corporate recruiter, or they can work for a third-party agency, which is usually a recruitment firm that the company has hired to help them with their recruiting. What a recruiter really specializes in is understanding the needs of what the hiring manager wants for this role and being able to find people who match those needs. And oftentimes we have traits of both HR and sales and marketing. Like our cousin department in HR, we also have to comply with laws and regulations when we do our hiring practices. And like sales and marketing, we have to promote our positions out so that you see them and want to come and apply for them. So what does a recruiter actually do? Now, to be upfront and fair, it can vary a little bit from company to company, from different sized companies. If you're in a larger firm, like I work with a larger firm, there tends to be more departments getting involved in the hiring process. If you work for a smaller company, the recruiting group might take on more activities that, maybe for me, HR might handle this, or finance might handle this, or the legal group might handle, this part of the job description, whatever. In a smaller company, oftentimes recruiting can kind of take on some of those roles as well. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to walk you through what my process looks like. So a department within the company decides that they want to hire someone for the role. Now, they work with HR, they work with finance, they work with the legal team. All of these people work together to determine what are the qualifications needed for this position, how do we word that on the job description, and what is the salary band that is budgeted to that department for this position. So once all of that is figured out, they send that information over to me, the recruiter, and it's now on my dashboard as a live job opening. When I say a live job opening, that means that it is now live out where you can see it. So they've posted it on Indeed, LinkedIn, maybe they're pushing it out at job fairs. They've got it active so that you can now officially apply to the position. So now you see the position online, you say, hey, that sounds like me, I'm going to apply, and you submit your resume for the role. Your resume now comes to me. This is a whole separate video side note here, but there is no robot or anything that's filtering your resume before it gets to me. That's not how this works. You submit it, it comes into a list of people who have submitted it, and I get it on my desk. It says, hey Megan, 10 people have applied to your position now. Now I go through, I review your resume, I make sure that what you have in your skill set matches on paper what they're looking for the position, and I move you to the next stage of the process, which is I'm going to reach out and call you to pre-screen you for this role. Now, before we get into pre-screening, I want to clarify something, because oftentimes after people have had a pre-screen, if they get declined for the role, well, the recruiter didn't like me. Not necessarily the case. During that pre-screen call, we are looking for things that the hiring manager has told us they need for this position to be successful. If we're talking in that pre-screen call and we determine that you don't meet those qualifications of what that hiring manager asked for, we're not going to send you over to the hiring manager. Does that make sense? So for the sake of this video, we're going to assume that your resume is an excellent match for the job qualifications. And now we're going to go on to the next stage, which is submitting you to the hiring manager. So now at this point, we've had the pre-screen call, we're getting ready to submit you for consideration in hopes that the hiring manager will set an interview with you. So we write up what's known as a submittal. In that submittal, we send them your resume, but we also write some notes and say, hey, I spoke with this person. You mentioned that you really need this particular software program for the person coming into this role. This person has extensive experience with it, and they've highlighted it here on their resume, et cetera, et cetera. We're picking out things about you and your background and your skills that match what the hiring manager asked us for, because we want them to interview you. So now we send off that submittal to the hiring manager, we cross our fingers, and look, they've responded and they want to have an interview with you now. Wonderful news. The next step in the recruiting process is we work back and forth with you and the hiring manager to schedule on the calendar when is a good time for meetings. Now, the interview process is going to vary from company to company, from department to department. There is unfortunately really no standard of how an interview process works across the board. Typically, as recruiters, we try and suggest to the hiring manager that there are no more than 3 maximum rounds of interviews. Our hope is that they can get it done in 2, but 3 is acceptable across the board in this practice. So now you go through the interview process and we get to the stage where you've completed the final interview, and look at that, you're going to receive an offer. Congratulations, you're fantastic. So now the recruiter works back and forth between you and the hiring team to verify things that we discussed during the pre-screen, which number 1 is always going to be salary. We have that discussion with you early on because we want you to know, hey, here's the range of what they can pay. Is that viable for you? And the reason we ask that early on is because when it comes time to move into the offer, we don't want to see a huge discrepancy between what you want and what they're offering. Basically trying to ensure that we're all working within the same ballpark range. So now the hiring manager extends you the offer, you review it, you do a couple different things. Either you say, yep, that's great, we discussed that, I'm gonna accept it, and you sign off on the offer and accept. Or you say, hey, yes, I know we discussed this offer, here's a little bit more information about what I need. If we could get to this number, that'd be great. One way or the other, we work through the negotiating process with you and the hiring team to see if we can land on the number that makes everybody happy. Once everybody's happy, you go through, you sign the offer letter, and then at that point, you move into what's known as the onboarding process. Now again, at a smaller firm, or just in general, sometimes recruiters handle the onboarding process. In the position that I'm currently in, I don't do that. We have an onboarding team that handles that, but it could be your recruiter as well. The onboarding process is the time between when you sign your written offer letter and when you start the job. In that time frame, we're working on background checks, we're doing typically tax forms. If the company is issuing you equipment, we're shipping that equipment out. All of that's going on to get you ready and prepped for your first day of work. And now look at that. We're at day 1 of your start date. And that's more or less the process of what a recruiter does. Now, to keep in mind, that is one position with one candidate that we just mentioned. Now, most recruiters are going to have many more openings than one on their desk at one time. Just as an example, in November and December, I think I was running between 16 to 17 openings at one time. So if you can imagine that, for each position, we're talking to usually 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 people who are very viable in going through the interview process for each role. So as a recruiter, you stay busy. So I hope that gives you a better understanding of what a recruiter does on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure there are probably things I missed. I know there are things I didn't fully touch on. I just wanted to give you just a generic basic understanding of what recruiters do. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments, so please feel free to post in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts, and if there's something I missed, tell me that. All right, I gotta get back to work, so I'll see you next Friday.